Hello and welcome to our show. And here we're talking about spirituality and the answers it provides to questions we all ask about peace, about health, about the scourges damaging on our society. And today we have the pleasure to receive on this show His Holiness Bhakti Vasudeva Swami, Dr. Vasudev Das, who also has a PhD in Applied Management, Decision Services, Leadership and Organizational Change, but you're also a spiritual leader of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. First of all, I would like to ask you, did you join ISKCON before having this doctorate or after?
Oh, that's a nice question. When I joined the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, at the time I didn't have a doctorate degree. What traditionally happened was that I was instructed by my spiritual master, the late His Holiness Bhakti Swami, to go out and preach to professors.
Okay.
And when I executed that instruction, the results were very surprising. For instance, in my first 3 years of engaging in academic preaching, I had my first 25 publications in academic journals in 3 years. And that is outstanding. And so when that transpired, my spiritual master, he ordered me, hey, Vasudev, just go and get a PhD.
Now, you're a spiritual leader, all right? Is there a difference between spirituality and religion?
There are a little bit of differences and a common ground in the sense that spirituality, authentic spirituality has to do with Sanatana Dharma, eternal duty of the jiva, of the soul, to the supreme absolute. Whereas religion basically implies today I'm a Christian, the next day I can be a Muslim, the next day I can be a Buddhist. It has to do with faith. And our faith changes. Real spirituality does not change. It's just that the individual practitioner has to internalize it and have higher realizations for a future and present generative power process.
So how do you achieve that? Do we know that we are on a spiritual path? How do you realize that?
Yeah, it's a very simple thing. How do you realize you're on the spiritual path? When you're on the spiritual path, your sensory modalities and your mind are completely under your control. That's the first symptom of a spiritualist. That the spiritualist is the controller of the mind and the senses. The non-spiritualist is controlled by the mind and the senses.
Okay.
And so, traditionally, we see that people in general who are non-spiritual, they are like slaves to the mind and the senses.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to be enslaved. But we are, so to say, we are enslaved by the senses and the mind. And sometimes we pass the buck. We blame it on somebody called the devil.
Yes. So I'm coming to that. Yeah, people have problems every day, In the world, you see there are conflicts, there are wars. People suffering, families suffering, torn, all kinds of problems. And you are a spiritual leader of ISKCON. So basically, I mean, you get all your teachings from the Bhagavad Gita. And what does the Bhagavad Gita say about that? The source of all problems, what is it?
That's a very interesting question. Now, not only Bhagavad Gita, but also the Srimad Bhagavatam, the graduate study on spirituality, according to the Vedic literature of Srila Vyasadeva. The important factor that people need to understand is that we are like on a treadmill. We're trying to move fast, but we're in the same place. And that is saddening because people don't seem to understand their left and right when you talk about spirituality. And so in spiritual culture, or in sadhana, spiritual practice, we are able to determine the progress we are making by dint of how we are saying what we say. For instance, I may have a deep feeling for something that is transpiring. Or I may be concerned about something that is happening. But then, how I express those feelings and how it impacts on other people, that is what matters most. My intention notwithstanding. I may have good intentions.
Yeah.
But then, if I'm not able to control my emotions, I could have an outburst that may be detrimental or may add more salt to the problem than providing a solution. So, in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is mentioned that we have problems in this world. And not only Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, it is also correlated by modern criminologists. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is mentioned that the mind, if we are not able to control the mind becomes our worst enemy. In our conditioned state, we are literally controlled by the mind.
Yeah.
And we don't seem to realize that we are being controlled by the mind. Although we want to control the whole world, but we are controlled by the mind.
Yeah.
First of all, we need to control our mind and our senses before we try to control people around us. Otherwise, we become hypocritical. Yeah. And so the main problem in society is adanta gobi visatam, tamishram. What does that mean? That the lack of control of the senses is the cause of all our problems. This is correlated by modern criminologists. These texts were written over 5,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And the same information is being given by criminologists. The general theory of crime stipulates that all crimes and antisocial behavior, talk about drugs, illicit relationships, bullying, these are social vices. They are due to uncontrolled senses and uncontrolled mind.
Yeah.
This is exactly what Lord Krishna mentions in the Gita, that for the conditioned soul, the mind, the uncontrolled mind is our worst enemy. We think we have enemies somewhere else. Our problems are coming, the problems on this planet. It is not just Bhagavad Gita saying that or Bhagavatam saying that. The criminologists also say that the problems we have on this planet, crimes, social vices, are due to uncontrolled mind and uncontrolled senses.
So you say lack of control. Okay. Does spirituality have the answer to that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what is the answer? I mean, to control all that?
Now, the answer to that is that we engage in sadhana.
Yeah.
And sadhana means spiritual practice. Authentic spiritual practice guided by a bona fide spiritual master under checks and balances, guru, sadhu, and sas, practitioners, the scriptures, and a living spiritual master who has to guide us. See, if even you want to do a PhD, you need to work under a supervisor.
Yes.
You need to do your research, your dissertation under a supervisor. Spiritual culture is also having the same trend and process. And so we need to be guided by a realized soul, and along with that, scriptures, authentic scriptures, and not only realized souls and authentic scriptures, but practitioners also. So that's a check and balance.
Yeah. Now, we're talking about the world today. It's evolved. Technologies has taken over everywhere in our lives. We can't even live with our mobile phones today, and everyone is, connected in some way. But we're connected, but we feel that distance between human beings. Like you see, wars everywhere. So we're connected, but we see people hating each other. And have we, been disconnected also from our values, the roots of spirituality? Is it what is causing all those problems?
Like I mentioned before, the root cause is that we have digressed from the path of spirituality. We have digressed. We are so much sidetracked from the path of obeying the laws of God. We want to be worshipped. We want to be the controllers. We are false proprietors. The reason why we are heading nowhere or making little efforts with making little progress with so much of input is that we have not given up our mentality of false proprietorship. We are not proprietors. We are simply caretakers. If we don't understand that very simple principle, then it brings a lot of problem because we want to misappropriate the whole resources in the material world. At the same time, we are not able to appropriate our sensory modalities and the mind.
Yes.
So we are hypocritical. Talking about the modern day gadgets like the telephone, the smartphone, and the internet, I don't see anything wrong with these innovative inventions, and any intellectual will not see anything wrong with it. But you know what? So many books have been written by scholars, especially in America and in Europe, about how people could get free from attachment to the smartphone, attachment to the internet. I know people who failed out from college because of smartphone and internet. I know people who lost their jobs because of smartphone and internet. Now, it boils down to the same thing: inability to control the mind and the senses. We fought so much against slavery, but now the slavery that is going on within our own self, endogenous slavery, nobody's talking about that.
Again, the mind then. Again, the mind. The mind is not controlling. I mean, what's
behind? Then we become slaves to the mind.
Yeah.
Therefore, in spiritual culture, spiritual practice, you have that opportunity to become free from the impulse of the mind and the senses. For instance, if someone is a Swami, is supposed to be a Goswami, a controller of the mind and the senses. See, I've been celibate for 40 years. I have skills. I have over 35 publications in peer-reviewed journals. Most of my students are females. Okay, but then there's no question of exploitation because your senses and your mind are under control.
So, Your Holiness, it was very nice having you here. Of course, we're going to conclude for this episode, and we'll come back again. We'll have you for another series talking especially about the youths.
Thank you.
So thank you, dear viewers. We had His Holiness Bhakti Vasudeva Swami with us, and we will see you in another episode with him together.